Hi, my name is Andy and you're watching The Food Nook. Today we're gonna be making a carrot cake with a chocolate glaze. This is a recipe I've made several times in my life and it never worked out, so in some kind of weird way we're gonna be trying to defeat my nemesis today. Before we start the recipe, there are people working on my building, so there's gonna be construction noise all throughout this video. There's really nothing I can do about it, so I'm sorry. First thing we're gonna need for this recipe is a blender, because we're gonna be using carrots and we need to blend the carrots. But I don't have a blender, so I know I'm not giving myself the best odds at defeating this recipe. So what I'm gonna try to do is, I have an immersion blender with a fruit chopper attachment. I'm gonna try to cook the carrots a little bit so they get softer and then blend them using my immersion blender. I don't know if this will work, but we're gonna try anyways. The first thing we're gonna need is the carrots themselves. And we're gonna use 3 medium-sized carrots. And here they are. I'm gonna cook them on the microwave just because it's faster than boiling them in water. I'll set them on the microwave for a few minutes. Meanwhile, we're gonna work on the dry ingredients. I'll be right back. The carrots are cooking in the microwave and now we're gonna work on the dry ingredients, starting with flour. We're gonna be using 2.5 cups of flour for this cake. And now we're also gonna need 2 cups of sugar. No, this is not a diet-friendly recipe. It's gonna be using a lot of sugar. So yeah, if you're on a diet, just make some other cake. And 2 cups of sugar. Now, I'm just gonna mix everything just so it gets a more homogeneous mixture. This is everything we have to mix for now as far as dry ingredients. We're gonna be using baking powder later, but it's gonna be the last ingredient, so we don't have to worry about it right now. I'm gonna get my carrots on the microwave and then we can start working on the wet ingredients. Okay, so my carrots are cooked. They're quite soft and I think it's gonna be a little bit easier to blend them using the immersion blender since I don't have a regular blender. I'm gonna get the immersion blender so we can blend these carrots. Okay, so I'm gonna chop these into, oh, they're a little bit hard to chop inside of here, just so it's a little bit easier to blend. I am blending them with the skin. I think it's better if you're using like a regular blender. I think it's better to peel the carrots before. I'm not gonna worry about this because I'm actually gonna pass these carrots through a sieve before adding to the dry ingredients. To help the carrots blend a little bit better, I think I'm gonna add the oil inside the immersion blender, and it's gonna be 1/2 cup of oil. For this recipe, you can use any kind of neutral vegetable oil like canola or sunflower, grapeseed, whatever you want to use. I'm using soy oil because it's what's most available where I live, but you can use any oil you want. And we're gonna add 1/2 cup of oil. And there we go, 1/2 cup of oil. And now we're ready to start. Fingers crossed, let's hope this works. Oh my God. Okay, it's working better than I expected, but I'm gonna blend it just a little bit more. And I think I'm gonna add the eggs. So now I'm gonna add 4 whole eggs inside of here, beat them all together, and then we can mix with the dry ingredients. Okay, now we're gonna blend just for a little longer, just so we can mix everything. And then we mix with the dry ingredients, and we do this by passing through a sieve. And there we go, we have the carrots blended. They're quite liquid now because of the eggs, but I can still see that there are some chunks inside. Honestly, I don't know if it's a problem to leave the chunks in there, so I think I'm not gonna pass through the sieve like I said I would. The blender did a better job than I was expecting, so yeah, I'm gonna trust that it is not gonna affect the texture of the cake all that much. So now I'm gonna poke a hole inside of my flour, the flour and sugar mixture, just so I can add the wet ingredients in the center, so it's gonna be a little bit easier to mix everything together. There we go. Now we're ready to mix everything and get these flour combined with the wet ingredients. This bowl is a little bit too small for this cake, but no problems. We're gonna make it work. Okay, so everything is thoroughly combined. The texture is looking great, although there are some pieces of carrot inside. I don't know if this will ruin the recipe or it'll just be like a nice touch. We're gonna see, but so far so good. I think it's working nicely. So now we're gonna preheat the oven, and while the oven heats up, we're gonna dust a cake pan with a little bit of flour so we can add our cake and it doesn't stick to the cake pan. We also have to add our baking powder. This is very important, we can't forget this, but this is going to be the last ingredient just before we add this to the oven. So this is why I haven't added it yet. So I'm gonna preheat my oven and I'll be right back. Before we add the flour to the cake pan, we're gonna add just a drop of oil, a little bit more. And I'm gonna spread this using a kitchen brush. I'm gonna spread using a kitchen brush just so the flour has something to stick to. There we go. Everything is properly coated. We can add a little bit of flour inside. And then we can just spread this flour all throughout our cake pan. There we go. It's okay to make a little bit of a mess, there's no problem. I'm just gonna clean this up. Okay, so my oven is already preheated. So now all that's left to do is to add the baking powder to our mixture and take it to the oven to bake. Okay, so we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of baking powder inside the mixture, and then we're gonna slowly incorporate it. We can't go too fast. I don't know exactly why they say like this kind of yeast cannot be, beaten. So I'm just gonna do what they say. There we go, 1 tablespoon in. Honestly, I think this is a little bit too much, but that's what the recipe said, so I'm just gonna follow the recipe. And then we slowly incorporate it to the mixture. Now we're gonna place this inside the cake pan, and then we can take it to the oven to bake. Now we're gonna bake our cake. I have preheated my oven to full temperature, the maximum it goes, but we're gonna bake it for approximately 40 minutes at 180 Celsius. Fahrenheit, I have no clue, it's gonna be somewhere here on the screen. Well, it seems like I have finally conquered my nemesis. The cake looks beautiful. Now we will remove it from the cake pan and we can work on the chocolate glaze. There's just one thing. I wish I had a better and prettier cake pan. Like I wanted one of those with like the texture and the one that has like a hole in the middle, but I didn't have. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the cake out of the cake pan and I'm gonna like cut a hole in the center. Another problem of baking the cake on such a big cake pan like this is that the cake is kind of short, like it hasn't risen all that much because it is quite a big cake pan. So there's nothing we can do about it. It's gonna be like a shorter cake, but I'm gonna take this out of the cake pan and we're gonna cut a hole in the center just because I think it will look a little bit prettier once we add the chocolate glaze on top. Okay, so time for the truth, and voila! Looks delicious. It has baked perfectly and I am so happy. I'm so happy this worked out. I legit made this cake like 4 or 5 times before and it never worked. It always rises in the oven and then when I take it out, it kind of like deflates. But this time it worked perfectly. So yeah, now we're gonna try to somehow cut a perfect circle in the middle. I still don't know how. I think I'm gonna use a cup just to you know, mark a circle, and then we remove using the knife. Let's see. Okay. Wow. I'm kind of shocked that this worked so well. The cake is looking, I mean, it's looking great. Okay, so the reason we didn't make the chocolate glaze while the cake was cooking is because the chocolate glaze we're gonna make, once it sets, once it cools down, it crystallizes. So you get like a hard chocolate crust on top of the cake. So if we made it while the cake was cooking, it would have crystallized before we could add to the cake. This is a chocolate glaze that you have to make and immediately add it to the cake, otherwise it will harden and then you won't be able to use it anymore. So now I'm gonna take everything out, bring the stovetop here, and we can work on the glaze. And it is a super simple glaze. You all gonna love it. Okay, so we have everything here. What we're gonna use for this chocolate glaze is we're gonna use sugar, we're gonna use a chocolate milk powder, and we're gonna use milk and butter. Okay, we're gonna start with 8 tablespoons of the chocolate milk powder and the sugar. We're just gonna combine everything in the pan with the heat off, okay? Tablespoons of the chocolate milk mixture. Now we're gonna add 4 tablespoons of milk. I'm gonna try not to make the biggest mess in the world while doing this. And lastly, we're gonna use 2 tablespoons of butter. Okay, so I actually didn't have butter. Butter is better, but I forgot to buy it. That's my bad. So I'm gonna use margarine, which is what I have available. The end result is basically the same, but if you have butter, butter is better flavor-wise. Okay, so now with everything in the pan, we're gonna turn it on. Whoa. Okay, I almost died. No big deal. Now with everything in the pan, we're gonna start cooking, and we're gonna cook on low the entire time. So we're gonna cook this for a few minutes. First, we need everything to combine, so we need the butter or the margarine to melt. Once everything is combined, we're gonna wait until it starts to simmer. And once it starts to simmer, we're gonna cook for a little while, just until the glaze starts to thicken. And then once it's thickened, we add it straight to the cake. We can't wait, because once it starts to cool down, it starts to crystallize, and we don't want it to crystallize. We want it to crystallize on the cake. Okay, so step one is ready. Everything is combined. The butter has melted and the glaze is looking homogeneous. So now we just have to wait until it starts to simmer, and we'll do everything on low heat. We cannot let it sit. We have to constantly stir. So just so it doesn't stick to the bottom and doesn't burn. For this glaze, I really recommend you use a silicone spatula, because once the pan gets to a certain temperature, it is really easy for it to stick and then burn, and we don't want any burnt flavors in our chocolate glaze. So for this, a silicone spatula is really the best option. And remember, constantly stir until we get to the consistency we're looking for. Another thing you'll notice as the glaze cooks is that at first you will feel the grains of sugar, and as it gets to a temperature and the sugar starts to melt and incorporate on the glaze, you will feel that the glaze is getting smoother and smoother, and you won't feel the individual grains of sugar anymore. This means we are getting to our second stage, which is starting to simmer. It is almost starting to simmer, and then the glaze will be almost done. And we've reached step two. It is starting to simmer. Now it's imperative that we don't stop stirring, otherwise it will burn, and we're gonna cook this for just a few more minutes, just until we get to the consistency we're looking for. I say like 1 or 2 minutes is enough. If you have a non-stick pan, that's even better. I'm using stainless steel, which requires a little bit more care, but if you have a non-stick, that's even better. So now we're ready to add our chocolate glaze to our cake. Gonna set this aside just for a little bit, bring out our cake. And here's the thing, it's better if you have like a larger plate for the cake, so the chocolate glaze can fall to the sides. I didn't have, so I'm gonna use like this regular plate here, but it's gonna work out just the same. Okay, so we had a little bit of trouble. Apparently the chocolate glaze is a little too thin still, so it's kind of accumulating around the edges and it's almost overflowing. So I don't know exactly what to do. I'm kind of in a bad situation here. I'm gonna try to wait for it to solidify a little bit. I don't know. It's gonna work out just the same. Okay, so there we go. This is the best I could do. It was not gonna be me cooking if something didn't went wrong, but that's okay. Cooking in front of the camera sometimes is a little bit of a pressure, I'm not gonna lie. I'm still happy with the results. I just wish I had like a bigger plate so this mess wouldn't happen, but I mean, the chocolate glaze is amazing. It's just looking a little bit ugly, but I promise you, once this sets and crystallizes, it's gonna taste amazing. So I see you in a few minutes. Okay, so we're back and our chocolate glaze has crystallized. You can see that it is hard. It's not sticking to my finger, just like it should. I'm not gonna lie to you, this cake is kind of looking like shit. I'm not gonna pretend it isn't. Yeah, but I'm sure it is delicious. Next time, I promise I will get a better cake pan. I will make the glaze the right way, but I cannot do any of these things now, so all that's left for me to do is cut this thing and eat it. And that's what I'm gonna do now. One piece for me and one piece for Will, of course. Oopsie. I mean, it looks a little bit better once it is cut. I'm gonna ask Will to get a close-up shot here. Look at this chocolate glaze, how it gets like super hard and crunchy, like it crackles if you press it. This is like one of the best textures you can have on a chocolate glaze. It's like crunchy and sugary. It's really delicious. And now, just like always, all that's left for me to do is to eat and see how this is tasting like. I'm gonna ask Will to come here and have a bite of this with me, please, my friend, and let's see if this is any good. It is super delicious. It is super pretty. Look at this color, and the chocolate glaze is like, it is crunchy. It has like a sugary texture. It adds that sweetness. The cake is still a little bit warm, which is, I don't know, it makes it even more delicious. Maybe this looks ugly, but it tastes delicious. So I think in the end, that's what matters. No, that's not what matters. It matters to be pretty as well, but I mean, you do what you can. So for now, I say thank you so much for watching. I hope I catch you on the next video. Have a great day, and I see you soon. Bye bye.